Hello again, and I'm bringing you a. Oops, let me just adjust this. There we go. I'm bringing you a matchup chart of my main testament, and I haven't really uploaded any guides. I should probably update the testament guide, but for the most part, coming here into the patch, the sim patch, Winter patch season 2, testament feels pretty good, and I feel confident enough to make a matchup chart. Keep in mind this matchup chart isn't... I'm not going to say objective. What I'm trying to say is that it's not exact, it's just how I feel about the stuff that's going on, and I'm going to try to explain to you why. I don't know why I'm making this type of content, it's not really my thing, but I feel like it, so I might as well. But here it is, the testament matchup chart. So there's a few categories here, and they're not ranked on difficulty for the most part. You know, a matchup that's over here isn't, let's say, better than a matchup that's over here, right? And we've got the just do stuff category and explain itself. This is the matchup where I just do things and it all works out. The I'm having fun match. Yeah, the I'm having fun category where I'm just kind of doing my stuff and I'm having a great time, and it's really up to my opponent to actually make a good play, to get in, to do something good, right? Because I'm feeling really comfortable with what I'm doing. I'm doing my fireballs, I'm doing my okay, I'm just having a great time, I'm zoning, maybe I'm not zoning, maybe I'm doing something else, but it's honestly up to your opponent to actually beat you, if that makes sense. This is the it's complicated category, and it's because it's complicated. These matchups are not necessarily bad for testing, but they're really hard, they're really skill intensive. Same for the it's awkward category, they're not necessarily bad matchups, they just feel awkward to play, they're not binary in a way, it's not, there isn't really a flowchart way to play them. There isn't really a way to guarantee a win. It doesn't exactly feel good, it doesn't feel comfortable. And of course the get me out category, which is obvious. So let's start breaking them down. So the just do stuff Anji has a really hard time against Testament because Grave Reaper and Crow basically nullify his ability to spin. So while he would usually just spin into you, and you have to respect him a lot. If you just toss a Reaper out and he spins through it, you just move in and you hit him out of the spin and he has a bad time. His air approach, he can stall with JD, but Testament 6P is just so good that you really cannot approach Testament from the air. In the neutral, a lot of his pokes you can low profile with 2k, you outrange him with Fares, Grave Reaper creates a lot of problems for him. If he does get in, then it's a little bit scary, it can be a little bit hard to get out, but you have so many good buttons, like 2k can low profile a bunch of his things, 6p can blow through some of his options, even delay Nagiha, which he would want to delay Nagiha, but it's just not going to happen. Just in general, it's a really hard time, and it's really hard for Anji to just do anything. Same for Goldlewis. Thing is, if Goldlewis gets in, you're probably dead. I'm not going to lie, unless you have meter to spend on a reversal, Goldlewis will smoke your shit. Goldlewis will beat you up as a testing player, but outside of that, the neutral is basically impossible for Lewis. He has to call you out, and if you're playing very reactionary, if you're using 6p well, if you're using Reaper, if you're careful for his gun, he will have a really hard time getting in on you, he will have a really hard time just doing anything in this matchup. So it's relatively easy for Testament, you kinda just toss things out, you just have to be a little bit careful not to get hit, that's all. Leo, just like Anji, he has a really hard time getting in, though not as hard of a time. And his buttons are a little bit better than Anji's, he has a little bit more options he can use to kinda get around your options. Fireball actually is pretty good, surprisingly. H-Fireball is bad, however. Like H-Fireball, you can arbiter on reaction. H-Fireball, you can delete with Grave Reaper. You can toss out, if you have a succubus out, you can just teleport out of the way. He has a good DP, but you have so many ways to just not play around it at all. With good save jumps, with pressure, with Meat Crow. Pressure that's through box strings into Oki. I've done a guide about that, go check it out. It's really old. It's really old, but it still works. It's an insane Oki. It's the only thing I use. It's a true box string. You cannot get out of it. Leo just gets smoked by this. You cannot DP. It's just a hard time for Leo. But if he does get in, then you're kind of screwed, though. Like, you're just blocking his back to stance shit. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it's designed for you to beat it, basically. It's designed so you can interact with it and you can poke it. So there is a good chance that you're just going to be able to press a button or backdash or do something and get him out of the stance and have a fun time. Especially with 2K. 2K can low profile stance S, it can low profile stance speed, can low profile a lot of stuff actually. It can even go under his Berserker Slash. In general, 2K is really disgusting against Leo. So it's just another relatively easy matchup for you. With Soul, it's more or less the same. Soul has a bunch of options to quickly close the gap. One of his big problems is, in this matchup, a lot of his good buttons, 5S, 6S, they all lose to 2K. 2K is really good at just shutting them down. And because you're so good at just shutting down these options, Soul players have to use other buttons like 2S and like 2G. Try to play around your stuff. The problem is that when they start using those buttons, and 5S and your 2S are far superior than his, so he has a hard time doing anything. He also has to deal with your 6P. And 6P is disgusting. Another thing that Testament has against Soul that's really nice is you can low profile Bandit Revolver the second hit with 2K, which basically forces the Soul player to do stuff that he doesn't want to do. And because you're just diffusing the Bandit Revolver Oki and RPS, okay, what am I talking about? The RPS, no, it's hard for Soul. His DP is basically useless against Testament for the most part. It's hard to make use of it. Vortex is really nice, but he has to have meter to use it, and there has to not be a Grave Reaper in the way, because as you know, Charge Grave Reaper lasts forever, so he cannot just freely dash in like that. It's a really skill-intensive matchup for the Soul player and not so much for the Testament player. As long as you're pressing the right buttons and making the right decisions, it's really hard for him to play. Same with Faust. Faust, the thing is you're going to have to play a little bit differently. The thing that strikes you the first time you play this matchup is that the things that you usually do just kind of don't work for some reason. But the moment you adjust, the way you play this matchup is actually pretty okay for Testament. The first thing is less Grave Reaper and more Crow and Arbiter is required in this matchup. And that's basically it. Once you get going, Faust is pretty screwed. His defense options are not good enough to play around Testament. The only really troublesome part with Faust is maybe in the neutral or on offense when he can crawl, and it's really hard to hit him and you whiff and you get punished and it's not that fun, but there really isn't a space on the screen where Faust wants to stand. It's just bad for him in general. If he's close, he has to deal with 2K2D, he has to deal with 6P, he has to deal with 5S, he walks a little bit further away, 5S is still there, now he has to worry about Reaper. He has to worry about Arbiter. He moves further away. He cannot press anything anymore, but you still have Arbiter, you still have Crow. You have these nasty options. If he goes in the air, 6P, JD, JS, all these buttons just make him fly back down, crash into the ground, you know, you toss a Reaper. And if you start pressure, then it's really hard for Faust to do anything. Now he has some niche counterplay. J2K is very useful against Grave Reaper. The item toss can fuck you up. His pressure is good. If he starts pressuring you, you're going to have a hard time because Testament is not the best character defensively. You don't have that many good things that you can low profile with 2K, so that's a thing. But overall, it's a relatively easy matchup when you get the feel for it. Same with Millia, I would say. Thing is, Millia is hard to pin down. Millia is hard to hit. She does okay, you just have to guess. But she takes some time to kill you, and if Testament is able to get a good hit in, you can pin her down for basically forever. She has no good defensive options. Her 4-frame jab is good, the 2P, but it doesn't reach far enough to really threaten you, and you can just swoop Reaper, Crow, Reaper, Crow, Reaper, Crow, and she has so much trouble getting out. She just has to guess and guess and guess and guess, and if she guesses wrong, her risk is through the roof. You hit her once, you do Nostrovia, she dies. It's just hard for her. Giovanna has some good tools against Testament, but the thing is, you're forced to guess a little bit more than usual because of how fast she is, and you're not allowed to swing as much. And you have to watch out for Trovao, the move where she dashes forward, because it goes to fireballs. But that's about it. You still have the godlike 6P, you can wall prop a bunch of things with 2k. Once you pin her down, she doesn't really have good options to deal with it. Like, she cannot escape, she's just stuck there, she's walking all day long. It's a relatively easy matchup for Testament, as long as you play the neutral correctly. Now with Sin is relatively new, so it feels weird talking about him. And I haven't played that many Sin players, but from the time I got Sin player exposure, I can tell you that because Sin is a patch behind, like, his buttons are super negative, your neutral is just better, automatically. Just Fares does so much work for you. If he's staying, he is stuck. His air approach is really limited, he doesn't have good air buttons, so 6P absolutely dominates him in the air. JS, JD, they all do an amazing job. And his strongest option, the Elk Hunt, that you really have to worry about, gets shut down by the Reaper, so it's even hard for him to do that. And his pressure is not bad, but the RPS is generally not in his favor in a lot of interactions. Like, if you guess right once or twice, he is basically forced to eat a 2k 2d and to mix into whatever you want, and he cannot DP out of it, he cannot do anything because Testament. So. Same with Bridget. Bridget can give you some trouble in neutral. Bridget, if she knocks you down and you have to guess, it's not that fun of an experience. Also, yo-yo toss is really annoying, because you've done so much work to set up, and then she hits you once with a yo and it's all gone. And it kinda sucks. But for the most part, once again, if Testament gets going, she's pretty screwed. And it's not that hard to get going because you can cover the air so well with Crow, you can cover the ground, and you have 6P, and 6P basically stops everything. And you can 2k under a lot of her air approaches. She has, I wouldn't say she has that, like, a hard time really doing her stuff, but she has to work a lot to get in and to start playing the game. Once she starts playing the game, she's fine, but it's really hard for her to do it. Now onto its complicated sections. These matchups, some of them are good, some of them are bad. I don't know, I'll let you be the judge of that, but they are what I would call skill intensive matchups. And starting with Axel, like, with Axel, thing is, he has more range than you, he's a zoner, he's having a good time. You're not really allowed to set up. If you toss a Reaper, he's going to hit you. Even if you do stain him, he's going to do, I don't know, air, dash, back, JS, and it's all gone. So it's another matchup that you play differently. It's a matchup where you're actually on the offensive, not the defensive. But for the most part, like, it's not bad. I'd say it's like a 5-5. But it's really skill intensive for both players. Because Axel has to be really careful not to make a mistake. You have a lot of good buttons, 2k, you have 6p, you have 6h, which can catch him doing a lot of stuff and punish him in places where other characters won't be able to punish. He has to be careful about using the air, because you can just crawl. If you manage to get the Reaper out, he has to be really careful because you can teleport at any moment. So it creates a lot of complications for him. At the same time, you have to approach, you have to run in, you have to avoid, you have to guess right. You have to be careful with how you play around your Crow, around your Reaper, how you use Arbiter. It's really hard to actually use those tools correctly. But if you're doing those things right, the moment you get him, you get in, you win. It's like Axel is going to have some trouble getting out of your pressure. But you have to get in, and that's the hard part. And you have to use your tools very well. But overall, it's okay matchup. It's just skill intensive. Same with Kai. Kai has a bunch of good tools to deal with your pressure. He has Stun Dipper. His fireballs do a really nice job. His air normals, like JS, JK, those things are really good. Fodder Arc can create a lot of problems for you. The fireball war is pretty intensive, and my music, just a moment. As I was saying, the fireball war with Kai is pretty hard. Well, I wouldn't say hard, but you have to pay attention basically, you have to time things correctly, you have to think about, oh, should I delay a little bit and so I can catch fireball, because if I do something immediately I'm going to get hit. Stuff like that. So the fireball war is pretty interesting. At long range you mostly dominate. If you can get something off, like if you have to block something, like a Charleston Edge or like a Sacred Edge, then he's probably winning the fireball war and he's going to get in on you a little bit. In the neutral, I always talk about 6P and 2K being insane, and they still are. You can beat a lot of his pokes, but 6H basically shuts down everything. If Kai gets into 6H range, then you kinda stop playing the game, because far S gives you no reward, but if you get counter hit, you die. 2K gets beaten, 6P gets beaten. If you do Reaper, that's very risky, it's hard to get. So if he gets into 6H range, he's kinda just playing the game and you're blocking, and you're waiting for him to get away, for something to happen, you're trying to jump maybe. Stuff like that. When he starts pressure, you just have to be on point. Just like with Leo, Kai's pressure just gets him killed usually. Because Kai pressure without the Charleston Edge is kinda bad for the most part. But if he gets going, you know, things are hard. He has a lot of counterplay to your Reapers, a lot of counterplay to your Supers, but for the most part, if you win neutral, if you're playing correctly, if you're paying attention, it's just like any other regular matchup, it's just once again skill intensive. Same with Zato, you have a lot of tools to just absolutely wreck Eddie. Like Eddie is not that much of a deal, Reaper covers the ground, Crow covers the air, 2S, 6P, 6AG's buttons are really large, they hit a lot of things. You have teleport, so even if Eddie gets out, and if it's charging at you, you can just jump out of the way, teleport somewhere safe, and now he's on the other side of the screen, and Eddie has to move all the way back to where you are. And Zato cannot unsummon because you're right next to him, so you're just going to counter hit him to oblivion. But if Eddie does get out, if you fail to stop it, then, well, you're fucked for the most part. Like, it's a hard matchup. It's hard. But it doesn't feel particularly, just a volatile matchup. It's a volatile match. Like, whoever gets his things going just wins. It's that type of matchup. So the footsies have to be fucking insane. And like, Zato buttons are good. I'm not going to lie, like, my Fares is good, but Zato buttons are fucking good. So, yeah. Potemkin is a weird one. You would think that being a big body, Potemkin is actually bullied by Testament like Goldlewis is, but that's not the case at all. It's funny because you control the pace of the match, but you have no control of neutral, if that makes sense. It's really weird. You have to play it and you have to understand the matchup to know what I'm talking about. It's a really weird matchup. Because you cannot freely use your Grave Reapers. If you do a Grave Reaper, he's going to flick you, you lose neutral, he's in, and you're having trouble. You cannot freely use Crow. You do Crow, he flicks you, bad times. At the same time, like, he has to get through your Pares, he has to get through 6S, he has to get through Arbiter, he has to get through 6P and 2K, and 2K crushes Potemkin in so many ways. It's really it's really pathetic, it's really sad. I feel you, Potemkin bros. This matchup is not fun. And if you get him stained, you know, if you land the Crow once, like, Potemkin has no neutral, he's too slow, he cannot do anything. Your pressure is suffocating, he's a big body, his buttons are slow, he has a hard time getting out. If he pressures you, there's this really nice thing where if he's doing a throw strike mix-up and he's too far away, so he has to do Kara Potemkin Buster to throw you, then if you press 2K, you can low profile basically off his strikes and you can stop the Kara Potemkin Buster. And by saying this, you're like, well, this sounds like the easy matchup, and I'm not saying it's a bad matchup for Testament, quite the opposite. I think Testament does really well in this matchup, but it's really hard, it's really unusual. Your neutral has to be on point. Like, you fuck up neutral, you die. Your neutral has to be really on point if you want to beat a Potemkin player. of the same skill, but if that's the case, it mostly functions well. You just have to be really careful throughout the entire thing, because you do a single little mistake, he flicks, he potbusters you, you're dead. That's really nasty. Baiken, my old main, when I played Baiken, I thought the Testament is a really bad matchup for her. Now that I play Testament, I feel like this is a pretty equal matchup, but it's really skill intensive for both players in many ways. The first thing is JS. JS is such a disgusting button, it's unbelievable. Usually when I play someone, one of the basic things that when I see I'm like, oh, you don't know this matchup at all, is when I do 2k2d, Grave Reaper, and they air dash at me, you can 6-speed that every single time. Not against Baiken apparently. JS comes out so fast that it actually beats you. You cannot 6-speed that shit. And it's baffling. Not only you cannot 6-speed, she punishes you. JS is fucking hilarious. So zoning is kinda hard. Using Reaper is kinda hard. At the same time, you really need to zone her. You really need to be on point with your Reapers. You really need to be on point with catching her air dashes. And if you're just sitting and she does Kabare, that's pretty bad for you too, because Kabare, you get hit by Kabare and it's kinda, oh, this horrible guessing game, it's just not fun. She's kinda doing her things, and you know you kinda have to press, but if you fuck up, you eat a lot of damage and then you get mixed. So it's not a fun time. 2k2d has a 1 frame gap, which usually works in your favor because you can catch jumps and backdashes and mashes and failed super attempts. Baiken can just parry you, like half of your mix-up, half of your pressure just goes away because you cannot do 2k2d. Which is really bad. You have to rely a lot more on other strings. You have to space your well to avoid parry. You gotta space your well. You gotta space yourself well to avoid parry. You have to be careful with how you press. Like the 50-50 Oki still works because she cannot parry one of the options, so she's kinda forced to guess. But if you go for the wall option and you do 2k, then every time you do 2D you're gambling for your life and it's not fun. A gun, if she has meter, she kinda shuts you down. Because anything you do, she can react with gun, and unless you have meter, you're going to eat it and you're going to have a bad time. She hits you once, she starts mixing you with her 50-50s, high walls, you're not having a good time. It's a really hard matchup. It's not a bad matchup, but it's a really hard matchup. And that's true for both players. Chipp, I don't have that much Chipp experience, but every time I play it, I wanna die. Chipp is so fast, like you just don't get to press a lot of buttons. Now 60 works wonders, and her buttons are good, you can challenge a lot. If you do walk him down, it's pretty fun, but like his movement speed, just all the things that Chipp does, his neutral is so good, like you have to take so many guesses and you have to play so well and so carefully. It's just a really hard, really annoying matchup. I don't have fun playing it. I assume players also don't have fun playing this matchup, but it's just, ugh. Jako, this might be a hot take, but Jako is a bad matchup for test. The thing with Jako is minion toss basically ruins your entire gameplay. It ruins your entire game plan. Like, you cannot do Reaper against minion toss, you cannot do Crow against minion toss, you cannot do Arbiter. Whatever you do, she's just going to toss the minion and it's going to blow right through it and it's going to hit you and it's going to be ruined. Like, you're going to work so hard to establish pressure, you're establishing control, you're establishing succubi, crow pressure, stain, and then she tosses a minion and everything goes away. Testament is actually pretty good at dealing with flank minions, like 6p, Arbiter if you time it well, 2k, you can go under it and just run in, you can teleport, you can do a lot of stuff. The big problem with this matchup is Jako doing kick, like she does some save moves into kick or into cancel. And usually if I'm playing like Baiken or if I'm playing like Soul, I can just DP, I can just do some other shenanigans, I can try to FG, so she whiffs and I can punish her with Fire S or something. Not in this matchup, like Testament, you don't have a way to challenge that shit. She can just do kick for free. She can just do kick over and over and over again for free. She can just do something unsafe, cancel into like minion recall into minion pickup. You have no way of stopping it, you have no way of interacting with it. Your only hope is to like FG her out so she whiffs her kick and you can attempt to punish, but if that happens, your best punish is 2k. If you're in range, maybe 2D, maybe far slash. Then she has mix up, then she has corner pressure. Like if you walk her down, you win. Like that's any Testament matchup. If you walk them down, you win, but it's really hard to do. It's really hard to play neutral. It's really hard to defend. It's just not a fun matchup at all. It's hard. Really skill intensive, awkward matchup. You're not having fun. Same with, like if you walk down, you're having a great time. You have good buttons. The problem is that she has so many ways to approach you. And she has so many ways to shut down your zoning, mainly chemical off. Chemical off is absolutely disgusting in this matchup. When does chemical off, I just want to rip my shirt off and I want to jump off a window or something, I don't know. Off a window, other window. Like, I cannot explain to you how fucking annoying chemical off is in this matchup. Chemical off just destroys Testament. Like, this chemical off and you're just sitting there and you're like, what have I done? Like, what were my life choices that led me to this situation? And then she has Stroke the Big Tree, she has her air dashes and hover dashes, and she can go under your Fares, she can 6p your stuff. It's a hard matchup. She does note and you're kinda screwed. I'm not saying it's easy for the new player either, it's probably hard, but for a Testament player it's really, really awkward. Really hard to do anything. Like, it's exceptionally difficult to get started, it's exceptionally difficult to pressure, it's not fun. Your neutral has to be on point, you have to guess a lot. I don't have much experience with Mei, but I'd say Mei is an awkward matchup. Dolphin, funnily enough, is hard to deal with. Her jump art is very wide, very big, like she goes really high in the air. It's really hard to deal with for Testament, it's a little bit weird to enter. Her big buttons sometimes quash with 6p, which is hilarious. I don't know how anyone quashes with Testament 6p, but it's something that happens. She can Dolphin over your Grave Reapers, and that can create a lot of problems. It would usually force you to do Diagonal Reaper, which is not optimal, because if you're doing Diagonal Reaper, then you cannot do Crow, and you have to do something else. That's kinda hard. That's how I feel about it. The other problem with the matchup is she hits you once and you die. Like one good old 5H or 6H and you're dead. It's not fun. Nago... It's awkward because you're basically at the mercy of the Nago player. Which sounds weird, but... like, you don't have that many good tools to deal with Nago. You can low profile a bunch of things. Low profile Fares, that's super annoying for the Nago player. You can kinda snap him out of the air with Crow, you can do Arbiter at an unfortunate for him time, he's going to have a not so fun time. If you start pressure, Nago is in a lot of trouble. The thing is, if Nago has blood and you have to guess on what he's going to do next, and he hits you, you die, it's not fun. If Nago has, blood and you're playing the neutral, and you do your stuff and he does Clone or Beyblade and you die, it's not fun. And he's going to do it and you're not going to be able to stop him because you just can't. So for the most part, if the Nago player is playing well, you're just kind of sitting there and you're waiting for him to do something so you can do something in response and hopefully, get something going. That's how it feels, like he's in total control for the most part. And even if you do hit him and you start doing your zoning and shit, as long as he has blood, all he has to do is Clone, fuck you, and you're back to square one. You're back to square one. Good thing is, if he runs out of blood, if he's level 2, and he cannot use those tools, he's stuck. He cannot do anything. He cannot hope to get in. He can try to jump, Crow. He can try to approach from the ground, Arbiter, Reaper, Arbiter, Crow, Arbiter again, Reaper, Teleport. If he gets in, just teleport. it's really hard for him to do anything. And the thing is, if another player is trying to approach you, that's his problem, you're going to beat him. If they're not, you're going to be approaching them, which is also still bad for them because you're going to be pressuring them like a lot, and Nago will have a hard time getting out of pressure. But until that happens, like, you're at his mercy. You just pray that he does something that you can prey upon and have fun. Ram, I don't even want to talk about Ram. She just presses Fares and you lose. She starts doing Rekka pressure and you lose. You do Reaper, she does Swords, you lose. Sword toss. Yeah. You get pressure, you're pressuring, you're at Fares peak Fares range, like the very tip. You're doing Arbiter, she does more to Batu, you die. You die. Just not a fun matchup, a really hard matchup. 6p works wonders, 2k can do a lot of things, but like Ram is just chilling there, pressing her buttons and you're working your butt off. It's really hard, it's not fun, I don't like it, bad matchup. 6-4, Ram favor, something like that, maybe even worse, I don't know. Happy Chaos, same deal. Happy Chaos has such good buttons, has the zoning still kinda. He's safe on everything he does, because he can just pull out his gun and shoot. He has whoopable mix that you cannot do anything about because you don't have a reversal, so you cannot force him to guess, you just have to block, you have to hold it. It's not fun. You cannot use Reaper, you cannot use 10, you cannot use Arbiter. Every time you use those things, it's 10, a crow. Every time you use those things, it's a guess. And if you're unlucky on the guess, he's going to shoot you, or hit you, and then shoot you, and then do super, and break the wall, deal a ton of damage, and zone you for the rest of the game, and you're not going to have a good time. If you do happen to pressure him, you're doing mostly fine, but you're going to have to get in, you're going to have to guess right multiple times, you're going to have to need him to fuck up. Just awful matchup, just switch off of Testament. That's how I feel. That's my things. That's my thoughts. I don't know if I'm going to make any more tier lists. I don't think it's my thing, but I hope you found this useful. Let me know if you disagree on something, or if you think that there's something I'm missing, or something that I don't know that makes Testament really broken or really bad in the matchup. I don't know, you tell me. Testament is like in the gray zone for most people. Like, no one agrees on Testament matchups, understandable. And as a Testament main, I'm kinda giving a little bit of light here. Like, in the sense, I'm telling you what my perspective is, so you can kinda see what, you know, Testament is feeling, what Testament sees, what Testament does. So you can kinda use my own experience to kinda put Testament on the matchup chart wherever you need them to be, or how you feel about them with your character. Because I don't know, maybe you were a Jackal player or something, I don't know, and you had no idea that Testament is actually sweating their butt off to play against you, and suddenly like, oh, maybe I should do this more. That's the kind of purpose of this video, I think. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, whenever that is. Bye bye.